Okay, guys, we're gonna jump into some Warhammer videos because I want to watch Warhammer videos after listening to my audiobook on my walk today. Okay, this is the top 10 most powerful. Like, let me link it so that I'm not like being, I'm not being bad. Manually unpin, and this open the video and co-watch. I've never seen this guy before. So yeah, we'll see what is the top 10 most powerful factions, and we'll see if you guys agree.
So I think it's fair to say that Warhammer 40k is one of the most ridiculous fictional universes ever created. Every single faction seems to be god tier, and it's absolutely baffling why they haven't completely destroyed the universe yet. From giant alien space dinosaurs that literally consume every living thing on a planet and then pop out infinite more dinosaurs, to ancient alien undead robots that have weapons designed to kill gods.
So I do get the like, how haven't they killed each other yet? But it's like the mutually assured destruction thing. Like, you probably have to kill, like, just destroy the planets to like wipe out people like that.
How about the forces of humanity that may just be regular people at the end of the day, but when you have little
super under-equipped regular people,
millions of soldiers at a problem until it goes away, you're definitely gonna rank pretty high on the power tier. But if every single faction is this ridiculous, who is the strongest? Who has the best chance at dominating the entire galaxy? Well, that's what we're going to figure out today as we dive into the 10 most ridiculous and powerful Warhammer factions in existence.
So this makes me wonder if he's talking in terms of like the tabletop game, or if he's talking in terms of like theoretically. And IMO, isn't it just going to be like the Necrons? He doesn't cover the tabletop, so this is just lore-wise. Gotcha. Okay, so he never covers the tabletop.
Stick around to the end of the video because there's going to be a bonus segment that helps clarify this list and gives you a real good picture of what this galaxy actually looks like. And although this is meant to be a standalone video, it's technically a part 2, as the video I made right before this one covered 10 more factions that didn't quite make the cut. So if you
Okay, so he covered 10 factions that were not the top 10. I will not be watching that.
Started with number 10, the Tau Empire. So the really interesting thing about the Tau is that they're actually the youngest race in the galaxy. But despite not having been around for as long as the other factions, their technological advancement rates are downright supernatural. You see, they only discovered fire some 3,000 years ago, and yet now they maintain a galactic presence, and with each new sphere expansion, they conquer more territory.
Oh shit, I didn't know they were like, I knew they were a baby, but I didn't know it was like 3,000 years ago.
Without getting into the motivations of their leaders, because there may or may not be some shady stuff happening there, but the Tau people themselves, honest to God, seem like the closest thing to actual good guys in the
You're telling me that the top 1% of society in all societies may be morally ambiguous?
40k franchise.
Should be 6,000?
They all collectively believe in this thing known as the greater good, which is basically a creed that states to do the most good for the most people with every action that you take.
I didn't know they were like this.
Don't get it twisted. The Tau definitely aren't perfect. They utilize a pretty rigid caste system. And a lot of the times, the do the most good for the most people thing kind of boils down to doing the most good for the Tau Empire.
So I also want to say, this is like very interesting because I took an ethics course in college where you discuss like ethics is a form of philosophy, what is wrong and what is right. And what they're following is called utilitarianism, which is like whatever like creates the most happy. So in the trolley problem, if you like, you know, do you kill one guy or do you kill 5 guys? Like if you do the action, is it morally ambiguous? But like in the trolley problem, it's literally like if you kill the 5 guys and they were miserable, then that is morally better than killing like one super happy guy. So like it's very, very cool.
Now, it's definitely true that they value peace and diplomacy far more than any other faction in the grim darkness of the far future. But their expansion requires compliance. So the Tau will basically give a new species 100 different opportunities to join their empire, but at the end of the day, if they still refuse them, let's just say the Tau don't take no for an answer.
Yeah.
However, despite the Tau's ruthless technological advancements and their unbelievable progression rate, they're still a relatively small faction. Now, they are an entire empire, so they're going to rank a little bit higher than smaller factions like the Grey Knights or the Sisters, but in the grand scheme of things like the Orcs or the Imperium, they still have a lot of growing to do.
So this is all lore, by the way. It's not tabletop, so it's like technically they're a baby race.
And the Tau fleets are undeniably powerful, but one of their major weaknesses is they still haven't mastered faster than light travel. So when they're expanding into new territory, it's comparatively slow when you look at other species that utilize the warp. Now don't get me wrong, not having to rely on the warp to travel through space does have its benefits. It's definitely far safer than going through hell itself. But it is.
And if your navigator dies, you don't just get stuck out there. And if you don't have a fucking beacon, then you don't just get stuck out there.
Comparatively slower, so they haven't expanded quite as much as other factions. And additionally,
I just don't like the design of the
size
Tau.
of their empire right
Even
now,
if they're powerful.
not being able to utilize the warp for travel or even move faster than the speed of light
Also, I've heard they're
actually
annoying
that
to
big of
deal
a deal
with.
for them. Now, all that being
Like
said, in
tabletop-wise?
the most recent Tau Sphere expansion, they were able to utilize the warp to travel. Let's just say it went really, really, really badly, though. And they may or may not have accidentally created a new Chaos God. Now,
What? There's 4. How the heck do you go into the warp and fuck it up that bad? And this is like my coworkers, like doing anything related to my job.
that's not 100%
A baby one?
confirmed, though, so we'll have to dive into that in
Is
another
it
video.
Vishtar,
But let's
whatever
just
that
say
guy
they
is?
still have a lot of learning to do. Despite this, the Tau operate some of the most advanced technology in the galaxy. And
The
at
armor
the moment,
god, or
still
not the armor,
truly
the
believe
weapons
in peace
dealer?
and unity. However, due to their smaller numbers, it's unlikely they would win in an all-out war against many of the other factions. If they manage to survive to the year 50k, it's very likely that we would see them take the top spot. But at the present time, they unfortunately rank a little bit lower. In the number 9 slot, we have the Adeptus Custodes.
Vashtor.
Also known
That's
as
the
the
one.
10,000, the Custodians are the royal guard of the God Emperor himself. Every single one of them is
I'm surprised
immortal
this
and a
is, like,
hero in their own right.
so low.
You can honestly think of them like an army of anime main characters. They're that ridiculous. They have complete mastery over every form of
Custodes Luffy.
combat and are trained in every weapon style. In the novel False Gods, one Space Marine remarks that the Custodians fight like a pack of lions, each one being an absolute apex killer in their own right.
I'm reading that book right now. Let's fucking go.
Whereas him and his battle brothers fight more like a pack of wolves, designed to be a unit first and foremost. Additionally, the equipment that the Custodians utilize is unbelievably powerful and valuable. They are given literally the best of the best. Not only is each one an absolute unit of an individual, but they are all incredibly intelligent as well, as a Custodian warrior must become a master of not only combat in all its forms, but in every conceivable path of education.
What?
They
Wait.
were the Emperor's royal bodyguards and had to be as close to his level intellectually as possible. And this is actually kind of difficult to comprehend because the Emperor
how long
at
that's
this
gonna
point in
take?
time is literally considered a god. And having to be intelligent
But he's also ancient. Like, he's had so much more time, to get on top of it.
enough that you can hold a conversation with God himself
Wolves? Ow!
is a monumentous accomplishment.
Goliath?
And to be fair, they themselves don't consider him a god, and neither did much of humanity when they were originally created. But he was
Yeah.
undeniably the greatest human being that ever lived. So honestly, from my perspective, that's still kind of badass. Now, the Custodians weren't just his royal
Very
bodyguards, they were also his closest friends. And the Emperor knew literally every single one of them by name. They conversed with him,
Damn.
consoled him, and in some instances even offered guidance to the Emperor. To
But
be on the
they
level
don't
of
do
a living
anything right
god,
now.
so much so that you can
Do they?
offer
Go to
guidance
private
him
school?
requires a mind like no
Super
other.
private
It's
school.
stated in the lore that every single Custodian is so unbelievably valuable that the only way to actually put a price tag on them is to use entire worlds as the monetary sum. Each one stands around 10 feet tall and are so strong that it
Damn.
takes 15 normal men just to lift their spear. And
What the fuck? So, double question. Is this just like a super special space marine? Because obviously they are enhanced in some way, or do they go through their own process to become a custodes? Yes, okay. So, like, to become one of these guys, no. Okay. Happy Easter, Gambit! Own process. They're test tube people. Okay, so a space marine comes out the womb just as a baby, and then they get, like, they stuff a whole bunch of organs in. But these guys are literally just, like, from scratch. Wow, okay. Biological alchemy. Oh, we call that gene splicing. Oh, back south here. Mass-produced bread artisan. That's like, this is like this is like the top sourdough, as opposed to my Walmart super white bread stuff. Okay. Have an expiration. Okay. Custodians don't. Yeah, because I did notice in some of the books, like, you have, like, old Astartes. And I'm like, what happens? I guess they just eventually die. They're like, I'm not used to that getting old.
If all of that is true, I bet you're wondering why they would be so low on the list. The only weakness that Custodes has is similar to other entries on this list, and that's their numbers. Even if they do currently maintain around 10,000 members, which isn't exactly
That's
confirmed,
kind of a lot.
it still pales in comparison to even the Space Marines.
That's a lot.
As it is
That's like
estimated that there are around 1,000 chapters, each with a cap of 1,000 members. And there's honestly probably far more than the Imperial records state, as not every single Space Marine chapter is what we call chapter compliant. So there's roughly as many custodians as around 10 chapters of Space Marines. The second major thing here is that the custodians had actually failed in their primary mission. They had allowed the Emperor to be mortally wounded by his son Horus. This would induce several thousand years of mourning, where the custodians basically stayed on Holy Terra, guarding and protecting the Emperor's body from any would-be assassins. And it's unfair to say that during this period of time they were doing nothing, as they were pretty instrumental in ending the rule of George Vandire. Not to mention standing...
Is Vandire the guy who's too busy to die? The original 10,000 custodians were handmade by the Emperor, but the post-heresy, they're still made in the same way. Ah, I gotcha. Oh. So basically, they saved Terra from, bureaucrats.
in guard over a vault of...
In old lore, the custodians stripped in mourning. Don't ask. Well, in current lore, the fucking Sisters of Battle do that. When they supposedly sin, I'm like, okay, get these custodians fucking naked. I don't even like, I'm done with that. If all the girls get naked when they do a bad, these guys did a pretty big bad. Time to be naked.
Truly horrific relics. But unlike the other forces of the Imperium, they were no longer taking the fight directly to the enemy itself. However, in recent times this has changed, and the Legio Custodes has become the Adeptus Custodes, and they have set off to bring the fight to the enemies of mankind once again, and satiate their wrath in the blood of heretics. As a single army, they are no doubt the most powerful beings mankind has ever seen. However, they are but 10,000 compared to the million-plus Space Marines or even the 30 trillion active guardsmen. Now, that being stated, in a one-on-one fight, a custodian can probably beat just about anybody on this list, with the exception of maybe a knight. But compared to an entire empire of, say, the next entry on this list, they're not going to be able to hold their own. In at number 8, we have the Craft World Eldar.
You're telling me that the Custodes couldn't beat a Craft World? Get naked with me, chat. Hold on. We don't even need a Custodes. Fuck the Custodes. Let's just get naked together. Finally, Eldar respect. Yes. They're strong. Are they strong as Custodes? Guys, nudist stream. Come on, wait, we can start something brand new. And if we make it religious, Twitch can't ban us.
In the 41st millennium, the Eldari Empire is in a fractious state. But of all the different Eldar factions, the Craft Worlds are by far the strongest. Not only are they all long-lived and disciplined warriors, but every single one of them is psychically gifted. And although the Psyker Scourge is becoming more commonplace in the 41st
I forgot
millennium,
that they all are
by
Psykers.
human standards, Psykers are still pretty rare. So it's difficult to comprehend an entire species of people who are able to manipulate the warp. Now, the Eldar are long-lived but seldom born, and as such are a dying species. Although, that being said, it wasn't always like this for the Eldar,
it's kind of
as
crazy.
after the War in Heaven 60 million years ago, they had the largest empire in the entire galaxy. However, millions of years of peace led to them getting kind of weird and experimental. And their hedonism eventually spawned a chaos god, which destroyed their entire society overnight.
You know, I'm just gonna say, if you win so hard that you accidentally, like, nut yourself a new chaos god, and that's your downfall, like, I don't know. I still think they're kind of winning. It's like, they've got this crazy, like, history now.
Now, the Craft Worlders that we know today were individuals who, at the time of the Great Apocalypse, were aboard massive ships known as Craft Worlds. You see, these ships are inconceivably enormous, some being documented as being thousands of miles long. You can think of them as mobile planets. Now, don't get me wrong, there are a lot of different Craft Worlds, from the Craft World of Uthway or Baeltan, or even the Black Library that the Harlequins protect. But
oh my gosh, I didn't know they had one called the Black Library.
But outside of these Craft Worlds, they really don't maintain much of a galactic presence. They haven't conquered a whole bunch of planets.
Also,
so in
this
terms
is
of
fucking
population,
sick. I've never
they
seen like the other
in
ones.
comparison to something like the Imperium, which has 1 million worlds under its control. Now, that being said, compared to humans, the Eldar live impossibly long lives, many of which are thousands of years old.
Cheating.
And originally, Upon their death, they would be reborn
Gene
like
cheating.
a phoenix. However, that ability has long since been lost to them, as nowadays, as soon as they die, their soul is devoured by Slaanesh. Now, the Craftworlders are able to protect themselves using a series of stones known as Soul Stones, which capture their psychic energy of their soul as soon as they die. The Craftworlders are then able to plug these stones into what is known as the Infinity Circuit, which allows the souls of the Eldar departed to basically live forever in the confines of their ships.
I actually didn't fully understand this the first time I heard it. Bricky explained this, but now the way it is 1, 2, 3, Eldar used to be reborn. So technically can die, but technically can't die as immediately reborn. However, now Slaanesh, eat the soul upon death. Instead, put soul in stone, Slaanesh Angie Slaanesh. But soul put in basically like it's basically just like I don't know, like the cluster of Steven Universe. And then they just sit there. So, does it suck?
Meaning that the destruction of a single craft world is not just the loss of their home, but of all of their ancestors as well. And these spirits are capable of offering more than just guidance, as they can be plugged into what are known as wraith constructs, which you can think of like an Eldar dreadnought. It's a machine constructed entirely of a substance known as wraithbone, and the soul of the departed Eldar is able to take full control over it. Now, these things are actually pretty controversial to a lot of Eldari, because they are undoubtedly effective in war, but on the other hand, a lot of them see this as basically necromancy, and that they're not allowing the souls of the departed to finally rest, and instead forcing them back onto the battlefield.
Wake up, Grandpa. We got a fucking war. I know you died after thousands of years of service, but you're not dead yet, brother.
Probably one of the most useful things that the Eldar have access to is a parallel dimension known as the Webway. It's a pocket dimension that exists between the physical universe and the immaterial. Its infinite corridors spread out like roots across the entire galaxy, and it offers a...
You're finally awake! That is such a good... Oh my god! Be an Eldari, thousands of years in Eldari heaven, and then get plugged into a robot. You're finally awake.
A much faster and safer way of travel than utilizing the border. However, in spite of their undeniable power and abilities, they are still a dying empire. The Eldar death rate far outpaces its birth rate. And despite the fact that the Eldari of the craft world are undoubtedly one of the major players in the galaxy right now, unless something major changes, they are a species that is doomed for inevitable extinction. In the number...
Oh, that kind of sucks. Inevitable extinction? Being in the soul stone has to suck less than getting eaten by she who thirsts. Well, I mean, if being in the soul stone is like perpetual agony, then probably not. Versus non-existence. Oh, hi, BB. My cat's here.
Number 7 slot, we have the Adeptus Mechanicus.
Good girl. Oh, what?
So the Adeptus Mechanicus is a faction of machine-worshipping cultists.
This is not what I was expecting. For the Adeptus Mechanicus to be above the Eldari?
They pray to the machine god in order to create and maintain all of the marvels of engineering that humanity is capable of. From the humble las rifle to the Gloriana-class battlecruisers, the Adeptus Mechanicus is responsible for all of them.
Toaster noises.
Now, mostly known for the Forge World of Mars, where the Mechanicum originated, they actually control many planets, each known as a Forge World, as the entire thing is basically a giant factory, every square inch of it dedicated to the production of the Imperium's tools of war. Now, to say they control one of the greatest armories of all time is a massive understatement, and each individual member of the Mechanicum is also incredibly intelligent, as they see the pursuit of knowledge as a holy quest, that logic is divine, and there is nothing more holy than calculations. They see flesh as weakness, and thus ritualistically replace more and more of their organic parts with the sanctified metal of their creations.
This is actually just like the average math major at my college.
Many of the Mechanicum's individuals no longer even look remotely human. The only thing left that holds them to their origins is potentially a few leftover organs so they can still maintain the moniker of humanity. However, there is a very important distinction to be made here. They do not want to be entirely machine, as thinking machines are forbidden. AI, or abominable intelligence as it is known, is blasphemy. And it spits directly in the face of the Omnissiah. So many of their...
So I know that AI caused like a big problem. Right? But I can't help but be like... They can't have like even a certain amount of advanced machinery, right? Okay, but like... I'm just curious as to like, have they ever attempted regulations? Like having a Neuralink? Yeah. It's tech heresy. Abominable intelligence shall not be tolerated. Gotcha. It's more like we've seen what this does. From the moment I understood the weakness of my flesh, it disgusted me until I discovered gooning. Darth, it's over. Jail.
Creations that are still capable of some form of thought have to have a human brain powering them. The vast majority of weaponry used by humanity can trace its origins back to the Mechanicum. They control massive fleets of warships, and not to mention the Titan legions as well. So they are undoubtedly one of the most powerful singular factions in all of humanity. But as far as weaknesses are concerned, they do have a couple. The first is that even though the Adeptus Mechanicus is normally seen as part of the Imperium, they do maintain independence and are allowed to operate as basically a free state. This is due to the signing of a document known as the Treaty of Mars. And at the end of the day, if their interests conflict with that of the Imperiums, they'll pursue their own first. Additionally, they are also ruthlessly addicted to tradition. Innovation is seen as heresy. Machines created by humanity at the peak of its power are seen as perfect in all their forms. So to improve upon
the toaster, it's so beautiful.
Perfection is blasphemy to their machine god. Now, in the novel Mechanicum, we see one of the main characters literally on death row for having committed the ultimate sin of trying to make her workshop goggles just a little bit better.
I want to fucking read that. What? Really?
Their superstitions and belief in machine spirits, the idea that every machine literally has a soul, may keep the machines they create functioning. However, they get in the way of making any form of actual progress. They're basically stuck in the Dark Ages and refuse to move forward. They do, however, have seemingly limitless resources in comparison to the Dark Mechanicum, and those materials will keep the fires of their forges burning for a long time to come.
So I do know that it's like considered heresy to upgrade because like the manual is like the Bible of the tech. So to change the manual is to like alter the Bible.
In the number 6 slot, we have the Chaos Space Marines. The 9 traitor legions of the Chaos Space Marines are Astartes that have figuratively and all too often literally sold their souls for power. They are dark and twisted race that lurk deep within the space between universes. Their ranks include the rotting and undying forms of the Death Guard, the mighty and terrible arcane sorcerers of the Thousand Suns, the depraved lunatics of the Emperor's children, and the frothing berserkers of the World Eaters, just to name a few. They are damned and lost souls who once served at the Emperor's side, but betrayed him and everything they ever knew to follow War Master Horus in his Great Rebellion. Now, after 9 years of brutal warfare, the traitor legions were inevitably pushed back and forced to take refuge in the bleeding wound in reality known as the Eye of Terror. There, time flows differently, and many of the traitors that besieged the Imperial Palace 10,000 years ago are still alive today. And
damn, I did not know that, actually. I didn't know that they were in like a times bubble.
Put that in perspective. The Loyalist Marines of the 41st
They don't, the forces of chaos don't work together and often fight each other. I know that, but I know there's Mr. Is it Abaddon? Who's like, Chaos United. One day we will all be together. It's like kind of like against the concept of chaos in general.
Millennium weren't alive back then. The Siege of Terror is all but a legend that has been passed down for several millennia. The traitor legions remember it far too well, as many of them were literally there. So the Chaos Space Marines are what you get when you take a superhuman warrior and then further empower them with the blessings of the Chaos Gods. They're basically an unholy unification of the peak of humanity's gene forging mixed with the arcane sorcery of the warp. Not to mention a whole lot of heresy and blasphemy thrown in for good measure. And on an individual level, a Chaos Space Marine is far stronger than their loyalist counterpart. However, as a cohesive fighting force, the inherent greed and selfishness of the Chaos Space Marines leaves a lot to be desired. And thus, the greatest weakness of chaos is its lack of unity. The traitor legions fight amongst themselves more than they fight any of their other enemies. In the novel Black Legion, we see a gathering of Chaos Space Marines just outside the Eye of Terror, waiting for the new War Master of Chaos, Abaddon the Despoiler, before embarking through the rift into real space. When the War Master finally arrives, he is greeted with constant and non-stop battle, as old grudges and rivalries between the traitor warbands runs deep. And in retrospect, gathering them all in one place was sure to incite violence. This occurs for a few reasons. The first is that resources within the Eye of Terror are incredibly scarce. Now, in the novel Storm of Iron, we see Chaos Space Marines literally descending upon their recently deceased battle brothers like a pack of vultures, looking to scavenge anything they can from their corpses, whether that be bits of armor, ammunition, or even their weaponry. Everyone is out for themselves. It doesn't matter how powerful you are, if you can't stand united with your brothers and you're constantly expecting one of them to stab you in the back, this is a major weakness that can be easily exploited by your enemy. Not to mention the fact that although the Traitor Marines are able to create new recruits, each warband doing so in their own unique way, their gene seed is incredibly unstable, as it has spent generations being corrupted by the warp. Now, on one hand, this can lead to some pretty interesting and useful mutations. However, it makes the implementation of their gene seed far more likely to encounter catastrophic consequences. Now, Abaddon the Despoiler seems to be the only one that's been able to unite the Traitor Legions for his Black Crusades. Even still, this is not perfect unity, warbands often breaking off to pursue their own interests despite his commands. Now, don't get it twisted. Don't mistake my words for evidence that they are not a threat to mankind, as the archenemy is getting stronger every day, as the Imperium of Man continues to fracture. And over time, they have been pushing further and further outside of the Eye of Terror and conquering new territory in real space. And recently, we've seen the 13th Black Crusade bear fruit, as Cadia was destroyed and the galaxy was split in half with the—
Did you guys hear what he just said? I missed that. As what?
Forming of the Cicatrix Maledictum, a festering wound that spreads from rim to galactic rim, plunging half of the Imperium into darkness. When the legions are able to set aside their differences for but a moment, calamity ensues. If they were ever to truly unite, the resulting carnage would be catastrophic. But right now, their lack of resources and territory fuel deep feuds, and old wounds and betrayals are never allowed to fully heal.
They literally just need to get over it.
Now, tied for the same spot, we have the Chaos Demons. And I'm gonna add these two together as they're pretty intrinsically linked, and it's difficult to comprehend.
5.5. I do appreciate that he is not counting this as like its own. These are clearly related, as I see these together all the time.
Just how powerful demons are. As on
the planet
one hand,
really guarded. The planet did not fall.
The most potentially dangerous faction in the entire galaxy, or the weakest.
It hasn't been evaporated.
100% honest.
It has not been shattered.
It's because this list was supposed to have 20 entries, and I'm just now realizing there's 21. So I'm gonna fix that by adding demons and Chaos Space Marines together. And it might
goofy looking.
In defense, this is exactly where they were gonna go on the list anyway, so just think of them at like 5.5.
I appreciate the honesty.
Are unquestionably powerful individuals.
Shit.
They have been blessed by the dark gods and have reached power levels thought impossible by mortals.
I just learned that this guy loves me.
The power of the Primordial Four rests not in the hands of mankind, but in their demonic servants. Every single demon is a twisted reflection of their paternal deity, and the chaos gods and their creations see the physical universe as little more than a diversion.
My God,
look at the physical.
Look at the booty on this lady who is being torn apart.
Is but a massive board game to them. The Great
This is
Game,
fucked up.
as they call it. Nurgle, Slaanesh, Tzeentch,
you can't kill her, she is so sexy.
Vie for dominance and see mortals as little more than pawns existing solely for their entertainment. Their corrupting influence spreads far and wide, and each one of them maintains armies of incredibly destructive potential, seemingly with limitless soldiers. If the two realms were to ever merge, and the infinite horrors of the warp were allowed to run free through our universe, mankind would quickly perish, and the universe would inevitably collapse in on itself. However, the denizens of the realm of chaos have a massive
I killed that big ass bird.
And that is that they can't maintain their presence in the physical realm for long periods of time. It normally takes a particularly powerful summoner or a really egregious act of sustained blasphemy to allow them to inhabit our realm.
Guys, every time you goon, you're enabling a demon to inhabit our fucking realm. Is it worth it?
The gods do not see this as a problem, as what fun would a game be without limitations? Nevertheless, demons, or the Neverborn as they're often referred to as, make for incredibly potent allies.
Can they appear quick?
And when summoned into battle, they'll wreak untold havoc.
You Slaaneshi looking ass, get the fuck. Have you seen Demonettes? Guys! No more, no more. The demons have to go away.
Havoc upon the Imperium of Man and
unsummon
any
them.
Force that would dare impede the pursuits of the forces of chaos. So each one of the four gods has different strengths and weaknesses and are radically different from their siblings. And when they actually manage to set aside their differences and unite, they can create some truly unstoppable armies. You see, the forces of the Blood God are massive and hulking melee monsters. They are literally the personification of violence. Whereas the forces of Tzeentch are all masters of the arcane. and excel in ranged warfare. The demons of Nurgle, however, are incredibly resilient, and each one being ludicrously difficult to put down. Not to mention his armies carry with them demonic plagues that were never meant for our universe. The forces of Slaanesh are as beautiful as they are cruel, and their agility is unmatched by any force in the physical universe. To really oversimplify it, you can think of a united demon army as having 4 major factors: strength, toughness, speed, and magic. And when they all come together, they make for an incredibly dangerous force.
But they don't do
There's
that.
just one major problem here. The 4 gods are not united, and war against each other more than anyone else. Something like 99% of all battles that the demons fight in takes place in the realm of chaos, rather than the physical universe.
I didn't know
It is said
that.
that the Emperor is strong enough to hold them back within the warp.
Dude, we need like a master of whisperers going over to Slaanesh and be like, dude, Khorne called you a bitch. Slaanesh be like, what the fuck? No shot. Go over to Nurgle and be like, dude, did you notice that your favorite rotting leg is missing? Oh, I guess you fucking Tzeentch took that shit. That's Tzeentch. He does that already? Shit. Khorne does call Slaanesh a bitch. Nothing new. We need to be like fueling them fighting each other.
But in reality, he's holding back 4 individuals
does that
that are
even to the
locked in
gods?
internal conflict with each
I know
other.
he does that to people.
If they were somehow able to unite, they would quite literally overpower him. And additionally, if they managed to not become completely dependent on their mortal followers to help them manifest in our universe, they would be by far the most powerful army to have ever existed. Now, thankfully for us, this is not the case, and demons rarely ever unite.
My guy.
It's not like this doesn't happen as it has in the past.
Let me get you a 10-step
but normally it's
skincare
for
routine.
a very limited amount of time. Sometimes being even far less time than they're able to exist in
He's
our universe.
globular.
So that is why it's kind of difficult to quantify just how powerful the Neverborn truly are. But one thing is for sure, they are undeniably one of the strongest forces in the universe. They just have a few major weaknesses that hold them back from the #1 spot.
Yeah, needing a person to be like, welcome in. The door's open.
And coming in at number 5, we have the
friend-shaped.
Adeptus Astartes.
Yo, what's up? It's Sunny. I'm here to tell you to subscribe. There's only 17% who are subscribed. It's better than it used to be. It used to be like really low. But hey, that's not 100. So I keep hitting the subscribe button. Thank you.
Okay,
Number
so there's a lot to
5.
say about Space Marines, as they make up something like 80% of all Warhammer lore. But in the interest of being fair, we're going to stick to the basics here. They're the poster children for
They're
Warhammer
the big
40k,
guys.
potentially its most iconic warriors.
blueberries.
They are transhuman super soldiers, clad in ceramite power armor, each having undergone relentless and rigorous gene therapy and augmentative surgeries, from the time they were children to become the ultimate warriors. They are the
What's your favorite legion? What's your favorite chat?
Imperium's mass-produced super soldiers, and each one is given upgrades such as a 3rd lung or a 2nd heart, a mechanism that allows them to heal
Blood
from
Angels,
pretty much
Space
any
Wolves?
injury, or even the ability to spit
Bearers?
acid.
Word
And they get
Bearers?
so much more
Like
ridiculous
Templar?
than that. They have
Iron Hands, Dark Angels. Wow, I'm surprised. It's a lot of the Space Wolves, Emperor's Children, White Scars, Lamenters, first Lamenters, Salamanders, let's go. I feel like Salamanders lack some, like, Night Lords, Raven Guard. Salamanders kind of have a lot of good theory, but I don't see a lot of content on them, which is unfortunate. I feel like some of, like, the most popular legions are ones that I just see more content made for. The Lamenters, Salamanders, Raptors, shoot. All right, this is good. This is good to see, like, the spread. Which one is most morally good? Probably Salamanders. I like the Ultramarines good. I like the Ultramarines too. It's just like easy to like the one you're most familiar with for me, and like they just have more content.
one that lets them consume the flesh of their enemy and learn all of their secrets. Another one that puts them into a coma if their injuries are so catastrophic that there's no way that they can heal from them, which will basically keep them alive long enough for an apothecary to get to them. And if their injuries are too great
To
for
take their
even
gene
that of
thing.
the apothecaries, it's possible that Space Marine will be entombed in a dreadnought, a walking life support tank, basically an iron lung with machine gun hands. And in this way, they'll be able to serve the Emperor indefinitely.
Damn.
The Space Marines are so far removed from normal humans that it's
shall know no
actually really
fear.
difficult for them to relate to
Legions,
us,
not
as a Space
chapters.
Marine can process information 100 times faster, and they're practically immortal. We know now that they do age, but just incredibly slowly.
Oh,
the
they
oldest
do.
Space Marine on record, Dantioch, having been well over 3,000 years old.
Okay, wait a second. So Dantioch was over 3,000 years old. Okay, but we do have older Space Marines than that because they're just in a time bubble.
And as of the time of this
Dantioch
recording,
the goat?
we've
Let's
never
go.
actually seen a Space
ancient
Marine
boy.
die from old age. So we don't really know how old they can
Oh.
get. Most Space
Even
Marines will
that guy
end up
died
perishing in the line of duty
Not
somewhere
of old
between
age.
200 and 400 years into their service.
Damn.
Now, the Space Marines were originally divided into 20 different legions, each with their own strengths and weaknesses, such as the Ultramarines, the Space Marines Master Tacticians. And depending on who you ask, the greatest Space Marines that ever lived, who are capable of doing literally everything. There were the Space
Masters
Wolves,
of everything.
Space Marine Vikings that rode giant wolves into battle and acted as the Emperor's executioners. There was also the Imperial Fists, whose fortresses were said to be completely impenetrable. Or even the
also- why are
Raven
we
Guard, who
saying, like,
somehow managed
were?
to make 8-foot-tall super soldiers in 1,000-pound ceramite armor incredibly stealthy, seemingly
Oh,
able
yeah.
to disappear without a trace and
That
make
is
no
pretty
sound
impressive.
with every step they took. These are only a couple of the great legions that made up the Space Marine forces. And although all the Space Marines ultimately
Norn the
served the
Fell-Handed is,
Emperor,
like,
each one
11,000?
of them was led
Damn.
by what was known as a Primarch. This was one of the Emperor's 20 sons, a demigod-level individual and some of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. The gene seed used to
Yeah.
create their warriors was pulled directly from each of the Primarchs, making each of the Primarchs a figurative and semi-literal father figure to the Space Marines. Nowadays,
Aw.
however, the legions are no more, and the vast majority of the Primarchs are either dead or missing. Space Marines are now
Oh, really?
divided
The
into
vast majority? I didn't know. Yeah, there's only 18. Bullet, like 19. Well, there one guy counts. There's definitely not 20 or 21. Bullet mark. A red light shows up on my forehead. Ah, make sure you guys are stretching and drinking water. Oh my gosh. There's only 6 active Primarchs? Damn. How did they die? How did the rest of them die? Robert and the Lion is back. And I know, Fulgrim's back. Guess who's back? Make sure you're drinking water, guys. Okay, so we have Gilliman. We have the Lion. Robert. Yeah, Horus doesn't exist. He's, like, not able to ever exist again. Yeah. Manus Sanguinius died. Who's alive? Matari. I can't remember all of the Primarchs, honestly. Rowboat Girly Man. What is up with that guy? People really clown on him. Gilman Lion, Fulgrim, I can't say his name. Mortarion, Magnus, Angron. Unfortunately, Magnus. He's got a silly name. He really does. Or let's call him Robert. Mortarion is the stinky one. Of course, like the one. Wait, what about Fulgrim? Wait, I think Fulgrim was in your list. But yeah, we've got a lot. Conrad Cruz. Oh yeah, I'm basically in Soul Hunter. They're immediately like, our Primarch is dead. And I'm like, which one? Who died before I got here? Are absent. Oh, absent. Gotcha.
to chapters of no more than 1,000 individuals at any given time. Now, even though this is supposed to be a hard and fast rule, there's a lot of chapters out there that kind of conveniently ignore this requirement. Now, it's difficult to put into perspective just how many Space Marines are out there, but it is estimated to be somewhere around 1 million. Although the actual number may be far higher, as we don't have accurate numbers for all of the chapters.
Yeah, there's supposed to be a person limit, but some of them are just like, oh, you know what? No. And just keep making more. 1 million seems like kind of crazy.
Even still, the Space Marines are one of the greatest fighting forces at mankind's disposal, seemingly able to counter any strategy the enemy may throw at them. So I know what you're thinking here. If the Loyalist
really
and Traitor
big.
Space Marines are genetically
large
similar
men.
to one another, but one of them has been empowered by the Chaos Gods, then why do the Loyalists actually rank higher?
Because they
And it's something
cooperate.
I've referred to in this video series with a couple of different factions, but the number one thing is unity. You see, Loyalist Marines can count on their brothers to have
Happy
their
Easter,
backs.
Happy Easter.
And whether that be members of their own chapter or reinforcements from other chapters,
They get
can all
along.
work together
This
to
arc
accomplish
goes
certain
so
goals.
hard.
Chaos
What
Space
the
Marines are
fuck?
inherently selfish, each one of them pretty much out for themselves above everything else.
Who the fuck is this? Who is this? And what's their phone number? What is their Vox number? The Black Templars? Bro, shut up.
And yeah, Loyalist
They listen
Marines
to
may
Linkin
have
Park and
long-standing
shit.
grudges between chapters, such as that between
That's
the Dark
John
Angels and the Space
Marine.
Wolves, but Chaos Space Marines actively hate each other. One pretty interesting
True.
example of this can be found in the 8th edition Death Guard Codex, where it says that they do not
look cool.
view the forces of the Imperium as some great enemy. They just view them as ignorant and deeply misguided. And one day, the Death Guard will show them the error of their ways, and they will be joined together in unity when it comes to worshiping the Grandfather. However, they actively hate the Thousand Sons, as the Thousand Sons know the primordial truth of the universe, yet still choose to follow Magnus. Loyalist Astartes fight.
Oh, I see. So it's you can't plead ignorance. It's more like a fuck you. You don't think like me.
Like a unified force. Whereas the
can't
Chaos
disagree.
Space Marines are, for lack of better words, chaotic, which may cause them to be a very difficult enemy to fight, as you never really know what you're up against. But in the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, knowing that you actually have brothers that you can rely on is one of the greatest strengths you can ask for.
Yo.
And at number 4, we have the Astra Militarum. So the Imperial Guard doesn't get nearly enough credit.
Are you kidding me? The Ant Army. Wait, okay. This is interesting because like I literally am like, there's no fucking way. Let him cook.
I know
Let him
there's
cook.
definitely going to be someone in the comment section that is completely baffled that I would rank them higher than their beloved Ultramarines.
You're
but
right.
The fact of
It's
the matter
me.
is that more than 80% of the Imperium's fighting is done by the regular old men and women of the Astra Militarum.
The
Imperium
regular
is made
old
up of many different types
billions.
of warriors, each with their own strengths and weaknesses. And that's honestly
It's fought by the men and women of the Astra Militarum for at least seconds at a time. At least seconds before they die.
its biggest strength.
Quantity
However,
is quality.
none
I
are
like
more
that.
prevalent than that of the Imperial Guard.
That's
and
an
I know
interesting
the
take.
majority of the 40k novels tend to focus on space marines or other such individuals clad in power armor.
Yeah,
but the
true.
reality is that the universe is an incredibly large place. And the
Ooh.
forces of the space marines or the custodians just can't be everywhere all at once.
I'm wondering if there's any good books about like the Astra Militarum.
So the space marines tend to act more like a supplement to the main force that is the Guard. It's honestly difficult to wrap your head around just how large the Astra Militarum truly is. They control vast legions of earth-shattering tanks and artillery, and seemingly infinite supplies of human fighters that drown out their enemy in wave after wave, sent in to crush all those that would stand in the Emperor's way.
How many babies do these people like? Okay, in the grim darkness of 40k, at least they do be fucking.
For every soldier that is killed in combat, there are 100 more ready to take their place.
They're really
now, when I was
fucking.
researching the Guard for this video, I found
Like,
a lot
they
of
are
different
not
conflicting numbers
stopping.
for them. But the most common figure that I found was that it's estimated
God.
there are around 30 trillion active
Darkness.
guardsmen. And that is just such
Damn.
an inconceivable number. Especially when you think about how there are only 1 million space marines. That's honest. Hold on a second, I gotta do some quick maths.
Where are they getting all these guys?
What's 30 trillion divided by 1 million?
30 trillion divided by 1 million is 30 million.
What?
That means
That's still so many. Oh my god.
there are 30 million guardsmen for every single space marine. That's absolutely ridiculous. And using this
What? What? That is ridiculous. Okay, I'm starting to understand. This is the Ant Army. That's Acadian. I like your eyes. So, okay, this is a lowball estimate. Planetary send like 10,000 people a year from each planet. Damn. Okay, no, I get it. When you got millions of planets, well, it doesn't take that many from each to really make 30 trillion.
the same quick maths, that would mean there are 3 billion guardsmen for every single stode. I'll be honest with you, I wrote out 30 trillion when I was
Stodes.
scripting this out, but I hadn't really put together just how many that was.
It's a lot.
And I'm a little bit
Each
blown
stode.
away. The big boys in power armor are pretty powerful, but they're not that powerful. They're not dealing with 30 million or 3 billion guardsmen by themselves.
Yeah,
And
that's
it's starting to
true.
make a lot more sense why many of the sources that I've found point to the Guard as the largest cohesive fighting force in the entire galaxy.
Yeah.
Okay, getting back on track. So the Guard's
guys are
numbers
fucked
make them
up.
masters of attrition-style warfare, and they're mankind's first responders to pretty much any threat. Not to mention they're spread
True.
out all over the galaxy, maintaining thousands of different regiments and thousands of worlds,
Guys, I feel like a tank is too advanced. Can we get a spear in here? Can we get a spear?
all of which are normally in pretty strategic positions, ready to respond
Not
to
enough
any
people are
threat, no
dying.
matter where it may appear. And it's really easy to underestimate these guys since they're essentially just human, especially when you
That
compare
tank
them
is
to the
heresy,
limitless
downgrade.
threats found in the 40k universe. But the Guard are absolutely no joke,
Give me
and
some
are by
bayonets.
far the most powerful fighting force in the entire Imperium. And that's not even to mention the Imperial Navy, which controls some of the largest fleets in the entire galaxy.
We got the
The
Navy.
Imperial Navy, to be fair, can arguably be called a different faction altogether. However,
Yeah.
that really depends on what era you're reading about, because during the Grand Crusade, they were both considered part of the same force. And even nowadays,
I
with
wanna
them
be in the
being
Imperial
technically
Navy.
separate entities, they're pretty intrinsically linked. The Guard operates as the frontline soldiers, while the Imperial Navy offers air and space support. But I think we've spent enough time on the Guard, so let's get into the top 3.
Yeah, top 3. This, I kind of get it now. All he needed to do was the division number, and I'd be like, yeah, that kind of adds up. It's just insane quantities of, it's just crazy.
And in the number 3 spot, we have the Orcs. If you thought the
Orcs.
numbers of the Guard were ridiculous, the
Incorrect.
Orcs take it to
Orcs
a whole new level.
is the best.
So the Orcs, or the unending green tide as some people like to call them, outnumber humanity 1,000 to 1. Now
Oh
that's
my
a rough
God.
guesstimate, but that's not just talking about the Guard. That's
They're
all
cheating, they're
humans.
plants.
And across the million worlds of the Imperium, the human population is said to be in the quintillions. Yet despite that absolutely ridiculous number, the Orcs still outnumber humanity. And honestly,
Holy
this makes
fuck.
a lot of sense, as they've been around for 60 million years. When a single Orc dies,
yeah,
it
that's
sheds
true.
a whole bunch of spores, which grow into new Orcs and reach maturity in about
That's
a year.
so
Each one of them is
funny.
quantifiably tougher and more dangerous than any normal human, many of which rival
It's
even that
literally
of
a
the
piece of-
Astartes.
it's
You
a
can think
plant.
of the Orcs like a sentient fungus, being closer to that of mushrooms than people. They have an organ system very similar to humans, but the major thing about them is that not all of these organs are essential to life, meaning that an orc can suffer grievous injuries that would kill a normal human and keep on fighting. Needless to say, this makes their
Oh.
force incredibly resilient and hard to put down.
I didn't know
so
that.
not only are the orcs a seemingly unstoppable army that can quickly
mushroom.
overrun a planet's
Ah,
defenses,
you blah,
but
blah,
once
blah,
a single
plant
orc shows up on your
mushroom,
planet,
fungus.
the infestation will linger practically indefinitely.
That
The
thing's a
orcs
plant.
also have this weird type of psychic
you're right,
power
it's fungus.
that we and even they themselves don't fully understand. It seems like they are able
mycella,
to
if you
bend
will.
reality to their whims, and in a sense, their beliefs actually become real. An orc psyker, known as a weird
The funny thing is that that's actually humans too. Self-fulfilling prophecy.
weird boy, may only be able to throw
Hold on. I just missed something super important.
their beliefs actually become real. An orc
Call a
psyker,
what?
known as a weird boy, may only be able to throw fireballs around because him and the orcs in his vicinity believe that he can.
There's no fucking way that they call orc psychers weird boys. That's what they used to call me. What do you mean a weird boy? This is canon? Dude, no fucking way. That is so, these are the goofballs of the fucking, of Warhammer. They call their doctors pain boys. No shot.
Orc engineers are able to basically smash wood and metal together and create massive war engines or even spaceships.
Are
Now,
there
whether or not this
engineers,
is due to their ability
build
to
boys?
bend reality or some innate knowledge left over in their subconscious from their creators is still unclear. All of these factors combined make for one of the most powerful armies in the entire 41st
Oh my
millennium.
God.
However, the orcs are not
They're
without
buffed.
their
They don't have to
weaknesses.
do anything to get
You see,
results.
The major problem with the orcs is that they're
The
incredibly
mech
ununified.
boys. They're
They
mech
have
boys.
no greater goals than to fight. And to be fair, that is what the old ones literally
Mech
bred them
boys.
for during the War in Heaven. Fighting to the orcs is like eating or drinking is to humans.
Purple
If
orc.
they go too long without a good scrap,
Never
they'll
seen
get
one.
physically sick. And orcs grow larger based on how many fights they've been
Yet.
in. And theoretically, there's no
Super
limit to
stealthy.
how large an orc can get. But despite the overwhelming amount of orcs that currently infest the galaxy, you can think of them as millions of unorganized groups just fighting millions of pointless wars in every sector of the galaxy at any given time. There's
just
no
going.
major arcing goal for the orcs, they just want to fight. And seeing as how the orcs
Oh.
only care about fighting, they're basically incapable of building an advanced society. Because if the orcs run out of enemies to clobber, they'll start fighting themselves. This is what makes the Prophet of Wog, Gaskell Thraka, such a threat, as he seems to be able to unite the orcs under his great Wog.
Oh,
But
kill
as
him.
of the time of this recording, even though he's gathered the largest Wog that the universe has ever seen,
Largest
he still
what?
hasn't united all of the orcs. If all of the orcs were truly to band together under a single banner and be aimed at Holy Terra itself, it could spell out the end times for humanity. But thankfully, that hasn't happened yet.
Oh
In the
my
number 2
God.
spot-
I look over and my chat is 100% wah. It's just an endless stream of orcs. Who would win? My chat or the psychic calling of the orcs? Oh my god, let's fucking go. Okay. Continuing on. Orcs, green is the best, orcs is the best. My chat could be orcs. If I walk up to an orc and I'm like, I'm an orc, and I'm able to convince them, do I turn into an orc? Can I be like, hey there, buddy. I am an orc. I just look weird. Orcs is the best. Wow. And will I just to us? I love it so much. I love that they break all the rules. I think genuinely, from what I've understood, the orc playstyle seems the most conducive to my personality of just kind of like, I work a day job that is a tech day job. I organize projects. I can be quite serious. When I'm playing games, I want to be a goofy idiot. I want to go big or go home. I want to roll a 1 and die. Or I want to roll a 6 and everyone else explodes. Fuck it, we've all. I like that. Old lore orc like faction starts called Degas, and the feral humans that paint their faces green. They believe they are orcs. That's so funny. Wait, I want that. That can be me. Wait, oh my god, wait. If I ever made an orc, oh my god. If I ever made an orc, like an orc, like tabletop legion, I would, or a faction, if I got like, the tabletop figures, could I have one Imperium of Man and paint them green? Flab and Boots. Sonny, the names orcs have all the other factions is even better. They have for other weird boy, pain boys, weck boys, weak boys, mech boys. I want that. I want it. I want one human being like, I'm an orc. Let's continue on the Necrons. I will say every time we get to the orcs, it takes over my brain. It's so funny.
We have the Necrons. The technology level of the Necrons is unlike anything we've ever seen before. They are the oldest faction in the galaxy, and the weapons they bring to bear kind of put all of the creations of humanity to shame, as their technology is millions of years past our own. Each individual Necron is an undying warrior, their bodies made of a living metal known as the necrodermis, that can literally repair itself from all but the most catastrophic of injuries. If the damage is too great, the Necron can phase out of existence and back to the safety of their tomb world, where they can either be fully repaired or their consciousness can be downloaded into a new body, making them basically immortal. The problem with the Necrons is twofold.
Cheating.
The first is that not all of the tomb worlds have come online yet. Now the Necrons that have woken back up are split across multiple different dynasties, spread across the entirety of the Milky Way. And although the Necrons are more unified than most species, all of the dynasties have different goals and ambitions, which constantly conflict with one another. And when it comes to arrogance, the Necron may even surpass that of the Eldar. So alliances tend to be rather short-lived. The other major weakness is the ability to repopulate the species, as all of the Necrons that currently exist were the Necron tier from 60 million years ago.
They lost their peepees.
And the Necron tier went extinct. There is no way to make a new Necron warrior. They can surely build new ships and canoptic constructs, but once a Necron is truly and utterly destroyed, they have no ability to replace them. This is why one of the major goals for the Necrons is to reverse the process of biotransference, which is what made them into the Necrons we know today. You see, the idea is to download the Necron's consciousness into a host species, basically allowing them to pick back up where they left off 60 million years ago. These individuals would trade immortality for a normal life. However, the sentience of the host species would be completely wiped out, so needless to say, humanity's not volunteering for this. To put into perspective just how ludicrous the technology of the Necrons truly is,
I didn't think about it.
I want to tell you about this thing known as
the Celestial Orrery,
which may be the most powerful weapon in existence. You see, it's basically a giant holographic map of the entire galaxy. Every single star, sector, and system are represented in perfect detail, and it actually updates in real time. So not only does the Celestial Orrery act like an incredibly powerful scrying device that gives the Necrons access to insane levels of information, but the dark secret of the Orrery is that if an individual was so inclined, they could literally tap stars out of existence on it. If an individual was to tap one of the motes of light within the celestial orrery that represents a star, the corresponding star in real space would supernova.
What? That is fucking cheating. That is cheating beyond belief. How is it linked to reality? Cadia. No, I'm kidding. It's not Cadia. But that's ridiculous. They pop stars? What do you mean? For what reason? That's why they don't use it? It's just like, why? Necrons, am I right, bro? What do you mean? Don't just Necrons, am I right? They're busted. They're pop stars. Stop it. Now I imagine Necrons fucking singing and dancing. No. No, they're not pop stars. They're not busting it down.
Causing absolutely catastrophic
This
Now,
this
thankfully,
technology?
there's one dynasty in particular that guards the orrery and won't
What
let
is wrong
anyone
with
else
them?
use it. They see themselves as gardeners of creation, plucking and trimming certain elements out of existence in order to preserve the timeline. Needless to say, many other Necron dynasties would love to get their hands on this thing, but they don't allow it. So it is theoretically possible that the Necrons could just tap Terra out of existence. However, the Oriscar would never allow such a thing to happen, as the resulting consequences on the course of history would be absolutely uncountable. And despite how crazy the truth of the orrery is, there's actually a fact that's far crazier.
They've got like a check
during
and
the War in
balance system.
Heaven, the orrery wasn't completely unique, as there were many creations that were capable of damage on similar scales. Before the Silent King ordered all of the Necrons to go to sleep in their tomb worlds, he ordered the destruction of all of them, seeing as no good could come from weapons of such immense destructive capability. However, the Celestial Orrery was given the pass and was allowed to remain functional. So if this thing was seen as safe enough to be allowed to continue to exist, we can only imagine how powerful these other weapons could have been. And it's probably a really good thing for the galaxy that they don't exist anymore.
So basically the other weapons, they were just like, it's fine. Like, this one was the sure. You can keep that one. Yeah, that one's fine. It gets a pass from me, boss. That's
okay, so we
crazy.
have one faction left to go on this list, and although in my opinion they are more of a threat to humanity than the Necrons, ironically, the Necrons probably stand the best chance at beating them compared to every other race in the galaxy.
The number one,
I'm talking, of course, about the number one slot, the
Tyranids.
So it is my opinion that at this moment in time in the 41st millennium, there is no greater threat to the galaxy than that of the Tyranids. They are seemingly infinite in numbers and are able to adapt to any situation. They come in infinite variations, each more horrifying than the last, and for all intents and purposes are the ultimate life form. Now
I'm confused. Why haven't they tried bug spray? Are they dumb?
I have mentioned the concept of unity many times throughout this video when it comes to determining the power of a certain faction. The Tyranids are possibly the most united faction that has ever existed, as they are all technically the same organism.
They tried,
Every single one of the quintillions of Tyranids in our galaxy are not just the same species, but they are all
Why is this Tyranid emo? When I was a young Tyranid, my hive master,
seemingly part of the same creature. They're all controlled by an impossibly vast intelligence known as the hive mind, a creature we really don't know much about, other than it exists outside of the Milky Way and is able to control all of the Tyranids simultaneously. This means that this thing is able to synchronize incredibly complex battle strategies across billions of battlefields at the same time.
So I have a question about the art. Sometimes I find like crazy cool art, but it's like damn low res like this. I'm like, where is there nowhere online that like the creator of this franchise of fucking games, Mr. Games, has like this uploaded in high res official books? That's before 2000. They can't like do anything about this. Pre-2012, dude, it's old, but like there's gotta be an original file somewhere. Old scans from books. Oh my god. Come on, guys, we gotta find the originals here.
This is absolutely unthinkable. Not even the most advanced supercomputers in the world are capable of such a thing. And considering that the hive mind knows literally everything that any single Tyranid has ever learned, and is capable of controlling quintillions of Tyranids at the exact same time, this would put the hive mind on the level of a god. And what's even more horrifying than this is that it is said that all of the Tyranids we have currently seen in the Milky Way are nothing but the scouts. and that they have already conquered every other galaxy. Now, whether or not this is true or not, we don't really know.
Oh my god, I hate it.
It would mean that the Milky Way is the last remaining bastion of sentient species, and once we're gone, there will be nothing but Tyranids. So the Tyranids as a species are supposed to represent the never-ending swarm. Wave after wave of horrifying creatures, from an endless plague of gaunts and gene stealers to the massive Hierophant biotitans, all the way up to their ships, which are technically just massive Tyranids that can measure over 10 miles in length. Now, if their numbers weren't terrifying enough, the fact that they're able to adapt quickly to new situations should be equally concerning. The Tyranids are often noted as being something like evolution on steroids. Now, when fighting the Tyranids, certain tactics cannot be used for very long, as the Tyranids learn and find new ways to counter them incredibly quickly. Whether it be through the ability to adapt new strategies to counter the enemy, or the fact that they can evolve in any way they need to. The Tyranids are never without options. If the enemy is, say, using enormous amounts of anti-tank rounds, the Tyranids can adapt to have even more armor. Is their target relying heavily on bunkers or fortified positions? Then the Tyranids will just produce more burrowing units to attack from underneath. Too many colossal titans on the battlefield?
Stop thinking,
well,
you're already like a bug.
Their own. There have even been examples of factions like the Death Guard trying to use poison or disease to combat them.
What the
Only for them to quickly develop to be immune. Even Grandfather Nurgle finds the Tyranids unbelievably frustrating to fight. And at this point, the Tyranids outnumber even...
This is not fair. Quickly is like, you gotta give me 100 years on this. This is actually the Hunter x Hunter bugs. So it's just like, they learn, they're fast, there's a million of them, they advance quickly. And don't they also like get the evolutionary traits of what they eat? Or am I thinking about fucking Space Marines getting the brains of those who they eat?
And the orcs.
Sometimes they can.
As long as organic matter for them to consume still exists in our galaxy, there will always be more Tyranids. From my perspective, the Tyranids really don't have a weakness that I could point out.
We need to get the Necron. Yeah, they do have a... Okay. Explode a sun. I think they will be weak to that. I think they are very weak to a supernova, and we have the Necrons, who... They have a weakness, the Necrons. Their weakness is like ultra weapons. Just how vast they are. Did that. What? What sun? Okay, explode the suns in a ring around the Milky Way and leave no gap to the Milky Way. They're probably planet hopping to get here. You tried it? Try again. They can't eat Necrons. I see. But the Necrons need to take care of these guys before they find a host species and go into it. They can't consume. Oh my god, I just imagine little dink, dink, dink as they're taking little bites out of the Necrons. They're like, oh, this sucks. They're too weak for chaos right now. They can't absorb demon flesh yet. Oh. Just do a ring around the galaxy. Do a little, get all the suns out of there and make it like a big nothing's there. So, you know, ask the Inquisitor. I feel like asking an Inquisitor anything gets you put on a list. I feel like the second you're like, Inquisitor, hey, they're like, that's heresy. You fucking heretic. And you just explode. Explodes your curious human with mind. Not the asked question. Okay, let's continue. Let's finish up the Tyranids here.
They have near perfect unity. They're able to adapt to any new situation. They outnumber every single species in the galaxy combined. And with the help of their gene stealer cults, are able to infiltrate any world they want. But if I had to come up with a weakness, the major one that I would point out is they don't have the ability to travel faster than the speed of light, and they don't utilize the warp to travel. At the end of the day, their ships are just migratory animals. So this takes them an incredibly long time to reach their destination. They're giving their enemies an incredibly long time to prepare for them. However, most of the time they don't even get that opportunity, as they have this thing known as the Shadow in the Warp, which is a massive psychic disturbance that the Tyranids produce that can shut down psychic powers on the battlefield. But it also renders their fleets almost completely invisible to detection systems. Additionally, the Tyranids do have a reliance on what is known as a synaptic link. You see, the hive mind influence spreads across impossible distances, but it does this through certain Tyranid species that act as a conduit for its commands. Tyranids that get too far out of range of such a link end up reverting into little more than feral beasts. They're still incredibly dangerous, but they're not the unified fighting force that they once were.
I want them to have like really bad ping. Like the further they get, like they just start like reacting really, really slowly. They're like, that's literally a thing. It exists. Oh my god, everything I thought of is like already done. Oh, it's so funny. They're like, it's like somebody like slashes them across their face and they're like, I missed. They start rubber banding. Oh my god. The response is not correct. They can't even stop functioning. Oh. DDoS the hive mind. What if we can figure out how to hack the hive mind? I guess that would be like the way. Pee yourself, Tyranids, and they all do that, and then they die of embarrassment immediately. And they're like, fuck, it's over, guys. We can't continue.
Every single day that goes by, more and more Tyranids are produced. And the noose they have created that is tightening around the throat of the Milky Way galaxy is getting tighter and tighter.
Damn.
With every other major faction in this list, there's a lot of ifs, buts, and maybes. If the orcs ever manage to make a list of goals and objectives, they're going to be incredibly powerful. If Abaddon is able to fully reunite the Chaos Warbands once again, for longer than just a single Black Crusade, it's going to be a major problem. If the Necron's Tomb Worlds start to come online all at once, it's going to be a major problem. If the Tau are allowed to continue advancing for another few thousand years, then they may dominate the galaxy. And as I'm sure you can see, there seems to be a pattern here. There's a lot of determining factors when it comes to where they're going to end up in the future. But as of right now, the Tyranids are the apocalyptic level threat. There's no ifs, buts, or maybes with the Tyranids. They are definitely the apex predator when it comes to all of the sentient species of the Milky Way. And if things continue as they're going now, we will all end up being nothing more than bug food. Now I know this video has run a lot.
Gone in 50k. I'm calling it. I'm calling. They will be deleted. To soy. They're not. You can't call the Tau soy. But I think the Tyranids, they're gonna fix this like inevitable doom thing and just make them like kind of guys.
Longer than all of my other
ones.
But
they
if
are?
you've made
Oh,
it this
shit.
far, I feel like a quick explanation for this list needs to be done. Just to give you a clearer picture of what the universe actually looks like.
They're literally
now,
soy
it's easy to
boys.
say that something like the Tau Empire is stronger than the Sisters of Battle. I think this goes without saying. But what you have to remember is that the Sisters, or even the Astra Militarum, only represent one portion of the Imperium as a whole. This goes as well for the forces of the Eldar Empire or the forces of Chaos. When you take these alliances into account,
the Sisters are weaker than the fucking Tau.
The list starts to look more like this. I would still rate the Tyranids as my #1 pick for the most dangerous faction in the entire galaxy. That's not going to change. The bugs are scary.
I can't understand
But the
these.
Imperium of Man as a unified whole scores a lot higher, whereas something like the Tau Empire ends up back near the bottom of the
Honorable
list.
mention?
One of
I
these
don't know.
factions is just
They're
vastly
small.
larger than the other. Now the great thing about the 41st
Make 'em
millennium
bigger.
is that you could honestly in good faith make an argument that any one of these factions could potentially be the strongest, if certain criteria are met.
This is the hey, don't get mad at me in the comments section. This is the, by the way, don't be angry. It's not that bad. Your favorite faction could be strong. I promise you. Too late. I'm mad. No. But I like it.
What are your thoughts? Would you change the order of this list?
Okay, give me a second. I can't fucking believe the Sisters of Battle aren't on this list, you dick. Don't you see how cool and sexy they are? Blocked. Alright, you give a subscribe and a like, and we're gonna move on to the next video. I'm not gonna send that comment.